Do you think if Israel could, they would avoid the death of any civilians? So you're saying there's some degree of punishment, of
No,
collective
they're
anger.
purposely killing civilians. This is the iron wall. They're trying to beat the Palestinians into submission, right? There's no way you kill this many civilians if you're trying to precisely take out Hamas fighters. And by the way, the Israeli spokesman, the IDF spokesman, has explicitly said that we are not pursuing precision bombing and that what we are doing is trying to, maximize the amount of destruction and damage that we can inflict on the Palestinians. And I think this is a major mistake on the part of Israel. First of all, it ends up being a moral stain on your reputation, number one. And number two, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. The Palestinians are not going to roll over and submit to Israeli domination of their life. So, the whole concept of the Iron Wall, Jabotinsky's term, was misguided. And by the way, if you look at what the Israelis are doing, they're trying to do two things. One is the Iron Wall, and that's where you punish the civilian population in Gaza and get them to submit. The other thing that they're trying to do is get Hamas. They want to destroy Hamas. And the belief there is that if they destroy Hamas, they've solved the problem. But as many Israelis know, including people on the hard right, even if you destroy Hamas, they are going to be replaced by another group, another resistance group, and that resistance group will employ terror.
Yeah, I think you've said that other terrorist organizations have used the situation in Palestine as a kind of a recruitment mechanism for a long time.
Osama bin Laden made it clear that this was one of his principal reasons for attacking the United States, right?
And the United States attacked back and got us into a 20-year war that cost the lives of millions of people, not American, but human beings.
Yeah.
And
engaged in torture.
Yeah.
No, I think if you look at how we reacted to 9/11 and how the Israelis are reacting to what happened on October 7th, there's quite a bit of similarity in that both sides, the Israeli side and the American side, are enraged, right? And they lash out and they go on a rampage. And the end result is not good.
Is there a capacity within Israel or within the United States after 9/11 to do something approximating turn the other cheek, of understanding the root of terror is hate and fighting that hate with, not to sound naive, but compassion?
Well, I don't think in either case you're going to turn the other cheek. I think
what I mean by that is some limited, powerful military response, but very limited.
Yeah, coupled with a smart political strategy.
Diplomacy.
Yeah, that's what they should have done.
Yeah.
Right.
But is there capacity for that? Or from your offensive realism perspective, it's just the odds are really low?
No, from my offensive realist perspective or my realist perspective, that's what you should do, right? My view is states are rational actors. They should be cunning, right? They should think about the strategic situation they're in and choose the appropriate response. And what happens, and this is why my theory is not always correct, is that sometimes states are not rational and they misbehave. I would argue in the Israeli case that it would have been good after October 7th or starting on October 7th if the United States had tried to hold the Israelis back and countenanced a more moderate response, a more take some time just to think about how to deal with this problem instead of lashing out. I think, given what happened to the Israelis, given how shocked they were, given the level of fear, given the level of rage, they were going to lash out. And I don't believe that was in their interest. I think it would have made sense to think about it and to think about a smarter strategy than they're now employing. And I think, the Americans blew it. The Americans gave them a bear hug and a green light and said, we'll give you all the weaponry you need and go out and do it. And I don't think that was the smart thing to do. Look, in the wake of October 7th, the Israelis had no good strategy. Right. It's not like there's a magic formula that they just didn't see. And we should have told them what the magic formula was. Right. That's not true. They were, in a sense, caught between a rock and a hard place in terms of what to do. But there's smarter things and dumber things. And I think the Israelis lashed out in ways that are counterproductive. I think, going on a rampage and, killing huge numbers of civilians it's obviously morally wrong, but it's also just not in their strategic interest, right? I mean, because it's not going to buy them anything, right? And in fact, it's going to cost them, right? Because people all over the planet are turning against Israel. I saw, an Israeli think tank today that has been tracking protests around the world, gave some figures for what it looked like between October 7th and October 13th in terms of the number of protests around the world that were pro-Israel versus pro-Palestine. And then it looked at the numbers from October 13th up to the present. And I think the numbers were 69% were pro-Palestinian in the first 6 days after October 7th, 69%. And I think 31%, take these numbers with a grain of salt, 31% were pro-Israel. So I think it was 69 and 31. Since then, since October 13th, if you look at the number of protests around the world, 95% have been pro-Palestinian and 5% have been pro-Israel. And what this tells you is that public opinion around the world has shifted against Israel. And if you look at some of the demonstrations in places like London and Washington, D.C., it's truly amazing the number of people who are coming out in support of the Palestinians. And all of this, again, is just to support my point that it was just not smart for Israel to launch this bombing campaign. Right. You can make an argument for going after Hamas and doing it in a surgical way or as surgical a way as possible. But that's not what they did. And again, my point to you is I think that this punishment campaign is not going to work strategically. In other words, they're not going to beat the Palestinians into submission. They're not going to finish off Hamas. And at the same time, by pursuing this strategy, they're doing huge damage to their reputation around the world.
Well, I just, in the wake of October 7th, given the geopolitical context, I think there's a lot of leverage to be the great ethical superpower that demonstrate power without killing any civilians and use that leverage, diplomatic leverage, to push forward something like Abrahamic Accords with more nations, with Saudi Arabia, push for peace aggressively, peace agreements, this kind of stuff, economic relationships, all of this kind of stuff. And thereby pressure the Palestinian Authority, towards perhaps a two-state solution.
No, but I think what you're missing here, just in the Israeli case, is that the Israeli government is not interested in a two-state solution. And you want to remember that Benjamin Netanyahu, who looks very hawkish when you look at him in isolation, doesn't look so hawkish when you look at him compared to the rest of the people in his cabinet, right? He almost looks like a moderate. he's got a lot of people who are way out to the right of him. And these people, and this, of course, includes Netanyahu, are not interested in a two-state solution. So the question you have to ask yourself is, if you're Benjamin Netanyahu and it's October 7th, late in the day, what do? You're not thinking about a two-state solution. You're thinking about an occupation that's not going to end. And the question is, how do you deal with the Palestinians, given what's just happened?
Well, there's people in the cabinet, and then there's history. And history remembers great leaders. And so Benjamin Netanyahu can look in the streets of Israel and see the protests and think of how history will remember him. And I think a two-state solution is on the table for a great leader.
Well, it was there. Was he the person who was going to take advantage of it? I don't think so, but
he's a student of history. See. Well, at this point, what the we'll see does, I mean, at this point, it's very difficult. Like you said, 95% now, or whatever the number is of protests. I think the window in which Israel has the ears of the world, it can do the big ethical peace action towards peace is, I think, is closed. Or maybe there's still a slither, but it's just the slippery slope of hate has taken off. It's quite depressing to watch what's going on.
I agree 100%. Unequivocally depressing.